Coming up on the Grand Circle Tour podcast, Detour.
You know, I'm often asked the question, what's my favorite film? And that's really like asking somebody who their favorite child is. You know, you love all your children. And I love all the films I worked on, and each one holds different memories for me.
Captain Stan Solo and Food Fairy Kris welcome author and animator Dave Bossert to the Solo Studios to discuss his career in films and his newest book, The Nightmare Before Christmas Visual Companion. Also, be sure to stay till the end to hear how you can enter to win a copy of Dave's new book, The House of the Future, Walt Disney, MIT, and Monsanto's Vision of Tomorrow. The Grand Circle Tour podcast is brought to you, as always, by Victor Naraki Realtor, serving Disney and the greater Orlando area with celebratingflorida.com and disneyatyourdoorstep.com. Realtor Victor Naraki makes living near Walt Disney World a reality, specializing in all the communities surrounding Disney. Whether you're looking to relocate or invest in a new property, maybe you want a vacation home for your retirement. With over a decade of experience in the area, Victor will adapt to your needs, help you find the right property, or get you the best price for your property. Reach out to him today on his website, celebratingflorida.com, or at disneyatyourdoorstep.com. Follow him at Victor Naraki Realtor on Facebook, and don't forget to tell him the Grand Circle Tour podcast sent you. This program is being brought to you by Kamikaze Motorcycles, the only motorcycle in the world that has no brakes.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, the Grand Circle Tour podcast proudly presents our spectacular festival pageant of thoughts and laughs, using thousands of bytes of computer dialects and electro-synthomagnetic personalities. The Grand Circle Tour podcast, Detour Show.
All right, and we got a special guest today, David. Oh, you know I'm being named Bossert.
Bossert.
Thank you. You got it. You got it, Stan. Keep going.
I got the first one ever. Right on.
He pronounces everybody's name wrong, Dave.
Yeah, it's actually an honor if I pronounce your name wrong. So we want to welcome Dave to the show. So Dave, you have a long history with Disney. I'm afraid to go into it. You started off as an animator, a pickup. What were you?
Yeah, no, I started in early 1984 at the Walt Disney Studios in the animation department, which is now known as Walt Disney Animation Studios. And I started work on The Black Cauldron. That was my first picture at the studio.
So do you remember what you actually were you animating for Black Cauldron?
Oh no, I started out like at the bottom of the ladder in what is known as an in-betweener position in the effects department. So that it's an entry-level position. That was my first feature film in the industry, and that's where I started. And when I finished The Black Cauldron, about a year or so after a little more than a year after I started working at the studio, I got bumped up to animator on the next project, which was The Great Mouse Detective.
Oh wow, nice.
Also known as Basil of Baker Street, yeah, which was the original title.
I love that movie.
But it was released as The Great Mouse Detective.
My daughter, I think, watched The Great Mouse Detective 500 times.
Wow.
That was her movie. That was her movie.
You sure it wasn't $4.99?
Yeah,
it might have been $499. Yeah, that was her favorite. Lily saying she loved The Black Cauldron. Mary saying Stan can't pronounce his own name.
And by the way, you know, I think The Black Cauldron is an underrated Disney animated film. I think people should watch it. You know, when I was at the studio, every so often I'd arrange a screening of The Black Cauldron in the theater, you know, at lunchtime or at the end of the day, and it was always standing room only because there were so many people who hadn't seen the film at that point. And this, you know, I'm talking like in the late 90s, early 2000s. There were a lot of people at the studio who hadn't seen it, and you know, I think there's a lot of great aspects of that film, but you know, what can I say?
Yeah. Everyone in our chat is saying that they love The Black Cauldron as well. It's
and you know, and I'll just add to it that I think that The Black Cauldron suffered from it was a transition movie. It was a transition from one management team to another management team. Michael Eisner, Frank Wells, Jeffrey Katzenberg came into Disney Studios as the new management regime, and the Black Cauldron was pretty much almost finished at that point. And typically what winds up happening when there's a management change out is that, you know, they don't want to deal with what was with the old group. They want to deal with what's new and what they're going to do, you know? So, you know, there's an incentive not to have something that was already in production become very successful because of obvious reasons. And so I don't think the film was really supported as well as it could have been in its initial release. But again, I think there's a fan base for Black Cauldron out there.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
And you worked on one of my favorites of all time, is Roger Rabbit. I adore that movie so much.
Yeah, you know, I'm often asked the question, "What's my favorite film?" And that's really like asking somebody who their favorite child is. You know, you love all your children, and I love all the films I worked on, and each one holds different memories for me. But Who Framed Roger Rabbit bubbles a little bit to the surface of all of that from the standpoint that I got to live in London for a while, and I worked on that movie in London with a very international crew of artists, and I made a lot of wonderful friends who are scattered all over the world now, and that's really what's you know, so memorable for me. I mean, it's a great film, and I really love it, and I think, you know, this year is the 35th anniversary of Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and it still holds up really well, considering it was a film done pre-computer days. And, you know, I just think that, you know, being able to live in London, making all those new friends, and it was sort of an adventure. It was kind of cool. It was the first time I was out of the United States, and so it holds a lot of fond memories.
Yeah. You've been how many movies altogether?
I want to say I have 32 or 33 theatrical credits.
Wow.
And then there's a bunch of television credits as well. And I couldn't tell you how many of those, because some of that stuff, like I worked on Ren and Stimpy for 4.5 seasons. So I've lost track of how many episodes that was in the 4.5 seasons.
Yeah.
But yeah, so but it you know, it's I think it was a very varied career. And then there's some credits that I didn't actually work on the movie, but I helped support the movie, doing some special projects things. So like for Frozen or Big Hero 6, you know. So when you say you worked on these, how does that, like, was there a favorite? That's like asking me if who's my favorite child.
You said that already. Yeah.
Come on,
I guess Roger Rabbit kind of goes to the top.
You know, Roger Rabbit pops to the top, but you know,
Dark Cauldron probably holds a close place to you in your heart.
Yeah, I mean, Black Cauldron, because it was my first picture at the studio. I have a soft spot for that. I have some fond memories from that film, but I have fond memories from all of the films. I really enjoyed working on Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin. I had fun working on The Lion King. I did a little bit of work in Los Angeles on Lion King, but I also spent 6 weeks in Orlando working on The Lion King when it was in production. Pocahontas is another film that I have a lot of fond memories from, and I really enjoyed working on. Fantasia 2000. You know, Fantasia 2000, I spent close to 5 years working on that project, and I got to become very good friends with Roy Disney. You know, I worked on a number of other projects with Roy after that. And as you guys probably know, the first book I wrote was Remembering Roy, which I wrote after he had passed away. Yeah, I mean, it's been a very varied career, and it's been a fun one, and the ride isn't over yet. I mean, I'm having a ball.
So you have these two new books out. The I didn't write them down. The Nightmare Before Christmas book and the Tomorrow and Tomorrow. Did you work on the Nightmare Before Christmas?
Yeah. So what I've told everybody is that I have a credit on Nightmare Before Christmas as a snow animator, and I did just a little bit for that movie. They needed some help, and I jumped in with a software engineer named Trin Huang, and the two of us created the snow for Halloween Town in that one sequence where it snows in Halloween Town. And I really emphasized the fact it was a small part of helping out, because there was a dozen character animators who did the bulk, almost all of the animation in The Nightmare Before Christmas. And I think it's important to recognize not only them, but the work that Henry did. Henry Selick's the director. A lot of people who are fans of The Nightmare Before Christmas think Tim Burton did The Nightmare Before Christmas. Tim came up with the concept, Tim did the character designs, and Tim produced the movie. But Henry Selick is the guy that put the vision of Nightmare Before Christmas. He made that movie as the day-to-day director on it, and I think that I always want to emphasize that. And also the music by Danny Elfman.
Oh, fabulous!
So and in the book, it's called Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas Visual Companion. The book is really a behind the scenes of how this film got made and why it's so successful. I mean, I try and talk a little bit about that in the epilogue of the book, which I refer to as the afterlife of the film. Really, it's a celebration of all of the talented artists and craftspeople and animators who really made that film what it is today. And when a film comes out, you hope it's going to have legs. That's industry speak for that. It's going to run for a couple of months in the theaters and make a lot of money.
Yep.
But, Nightmare Before Christmas has had the longest, luscious legs of any movie that you can think of, because 30 years on, the film is still, the fan base expands every year.
Yep.
And the kids who saw the movie in '93 when it was released to theaters, they're taking their kids today to see the film.
Mm-hmm.
And whether that's on Disney Plus or when they do special screenings, like, I'm going to be at the El Capitan tomorrow night in Hollywood with Don Hahn. And, it's really, to me, one of those great movies that kicks off the holiday season. And some people refer to it as being a cult classic. And I would say, no, it's a holiday classic. It falls into the bucket with Miracle on 34th Street, It's a Wonderful Life, the Chuck Jones, The Grinch Who Stole Christmas, the half-hour animated special, the Charlie Brown Christmas special, the Rankin and Bass stop-motion Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and Frosty the Snowman. Those films, to me, are really the holiday films that you want to see every year. And I do. I've been watching the Charlie Brown Christmas special for better than 50 years. I watch it every year. It's a staple. And The Nightmare Before Christmas, to me, is so wonderful because it took Tim's two favorite holidays, Halloween and Christmas, and mashes them together. And I feel like, tomorrow night when I'm at the El Capitan watching Nightmare Before Christmas on a big screen in 3D, and I'm going to be like, okay, we're into the holiday mode. I mean, I'm going to walk out of that theater and say, okay, Thanksgiving will be here tomorrow and Christmas is right around the corner.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I watched it the other day with my wife and my daughter, and my daughter said the same thing. She said, wait a minute, because afterwards we watched the credits, he goes, this wasn't directed by Tim Burton? I says, no, it wasn't. And she was shocked. And so you're absolutely right. Everybody seems to think that Tim Burton directed it.
No, and it really, every time I talk about the book and the film, I just want people to understand that Henry Selick is an incredible director. You know, last year he had Wendell and Wild out, which was a stop motion film, but he's also did James and the Giant Peach. He also did Coraline, which is really one of my favorite stop motion films outside of Nightmare Before Christmas. I mean, it's just absolutely fantastic films that Henry has done. So it's just, you know, I think he deserves his due.
Speaking of stop motion films, a friend of yours, I guess, just came out with The Inventor, and I'm trying to find it in the theater local near me, and I can't find it anywhere.
Yeah, you know what?
I want to see that.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate because you know, it was in the theaters. It only opened in like 700 or 800 theaters nationwide, and it was only there for maybe a week or two, and it just disappeared. Yeah. And it's a shame because it's such a beautiful film, and I really highly recommend it. I think if you keep your eyes out, it's going to show up on one of the streaming services at some point. And I just highly recommend people watch it. And I do believe it's going to get a little bit of awards buzz at the end of the year and beginning of the new year. So,
well, it might pick up legs just like Nightmare did.
It could. I hope it does.
It sounds amazing just from the way you and I'm sorry, I can't remember who was it you were on with.
Well, I had Aljon on, and then we had Jim Capobianco, the writer director, on.
Yeah. I really want to see that one. I'm looking at the chat here. Mary has a good one here. The stores agree with you. Plenty of Christmas available to buy out there.
I know.
It's not even Halloween yet.
I know it's kind of criminal. I think that when you start to see Christmas decorations or Christmas themed stuff in stores in August, you know, I just kind of feel like I don't mind seeing Halloween stuff popping up in late summer. But you know, come on, hold off on the Christmas stuff until right after Halloween. How's that?
Yeah,
you know,
November 1st it should be.
Yeah,
we lost Kris. She just messaged me saying the cats disconnected her. They were going nuts behind her.
Yeah, I saw them flying around back there.
Her and her cats. So I was watching The Nightmare Before Christmas, and I did have a question. So there's an opening shot with Sally, and her hair is kind of blowing, and I couldn't really tell if that was stop motion or if that was animated.
As far as I know, it was stop motion.
Yeah, it looked stop motion, but I'm thinking it could have been a really good animator.
Yeah, no, I think it was probably stop motion. It was part of the puppet, but you know, there was a little bit of 2D effects animation done when you see Jack burst into flames while he's singing "I Am the Pumpkin King." Yeah, that was a 2D animation that was done by really talented artist Gordon. Trying to remember his last name now, but anyway, he'll probably shoot me if he's watching this, because I can't remember his last name.
There's a lot of like smoke effects too.
Gordon Baker. There, I got it.
There we go.
I saved myself.
There's a lot of like smoke effects that had to have been 2D, I'm guessing, or added.
Yeah, you know, those kinds of things like the fire and the smoke, those were put in after the fact. You know, which you have to do when you're doing stop motion.
Yeah, that had to have been, because as we were watching it, we were kind of trying to pick out what is 2D, what is stop motion, what is. There was a fireplace at one point that I'm thinking that was an actual fire, and they green screened it or something.
Yeah, I mean that kind of stuff, you know, it just gets put in afterwards. And you know, again, they tried to do as much as you possibly could on set with the puppets. But there's certain things, you know, when you have a stop motion character jump up into the air, or, you know, jump through the air where they're not touching the ground, you have to have a rig that's holding them in place. And so that rig has to be removed after the fact. Those kinds of things.
Yeah, exactly. Kris, did you have are you still there, Kris?
Yeah, I'm here.
I wasn't sure if you were still with us or not.
No, I'm here.
Okay. I'm just bringing up a couple of photos here.
Yeah, and I want to show live and in color this beautiful book. I just got mine in the mail the other day, and I have quite a few of Dave's books in my collection.
Many
and
thanks.
He was nice enough to send me
you've got the book plate in there.
Yes,
okay.
The book plate. He sent me one for several of my books and autographed all of them. So that was so kind of you.
And by the way, anybody who has any of my books, if you go on my website, davidbossert.com, there's a tab along the top that says free stuff. And if you click on that, there's a little pull down menu, and you have three choices. You have book plates, bookmarks, and coasters. And so just go to the bottom of the page and follow the directions on sending me a stamped self-addressed envelope and with a note of what you want. And I will get it back to you, hopefully in a reasonable amount of time.
It was very quick.
Yeah, okay. I will tell you that I went to the mailbox today, and there was something that had been mailed out earlier in March. Earlier in October. So that's on its way to the person who wrote to me. But I'm happy to do that because I know, when there's book signings and, I'm doing a bunch of them in Southern California, if you live in the Midwest or you live up in New England or down in Florida, and but you want to have a book signed, just write to me through my website and I'll be happy to send you a signed book plate. And you can peel the back off and stick it right in the book.
Yep.
Beautiful. Very nice. And that's at davidbossert.com. You can get that. Yes. This was one of the effects that I wanted to talk about too. The lighting on Nightmare Before Christmas was absolutely amazing. This is a real shadow, obviously, not animated afterwards, and it's all due to the lighting team. Yes,
and the thing I will say, and kudos to Henry. Henry Selick really wanted to introduce live action filmmaking into stop motion, and that was moving camera and lighting and creating atmosphere and I think he did a fantastic job on it. There were really no restrictions, if you will, and so every set, they had a lighting guy, they have a cinematographer, and so they set these things up. And before they actually animate the scene, they would do a pop through, is what it was called, and a pop through is like doing a pose test. So they might pose the puppets every, 10 frames or every 8 frames, going through the action that the puppet would be doing in that particular shot. And they would look at that, and then they would do a second pop through that's maybe every 4 frames, and they'd really get a sense of, how they were going to animate the whole shot. And each one of those tests was reviewed by Henry and the animator, and there were any notes were given. The animator would then apply those notes to the next version of the scene. But typically they did 1 to 2 pop throughs per shot before they actually animated the shot.
Yeah. And then here was the. Why is it not? Oh boy. Why is this not moving to the next? There we go. This is the scene I was referring to with the fire in the background.
Yeah.
That looks so real. I'm thinking I'd have to have been a real fire green screened in later or something.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure how that was done, but more than likely it was put in after the fact.
Oh yeah, it was definitely put in after the fact. There's no way it was stop motion.
Yeah,
it does. It looks so real.
The characters. But yeah. But it's really cool when you watch the movie and you kind of look for these different hidden things throughout the whole movie, like what's animation, what's 2D, unless you don't want to ruin the porridge or whatever you want to call it. Caleb saying he loved that Joe Ranft was the story supervisor and voice of Igor in Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize it, but Joe Ranft was an incredibly talented guy, and he did improv and he did voices. He's the voice of I think it's Heinrich, the little caterpillar in Ants, not Ants, in the Bug's Life.
Bug's Life, yes.
Yeah.
Bug's Life. Yeah, little character called Heinrich. Joe did the voice for that character too. And by the way, Joe died prematurely in a car accident, and so there's a little tribute to Joe in the book, as there is for an artist that I went to Cal Arts with named Kelly Asbury, who was one of the assistant art directors, and also John Berry, who was really one of the top stop motion animators who worked on Nightmare. He passed away in 2000. So, I wanted to make sure that I did these little tributes to some of these folks who were, significant in their contribution to the film. And certainly Joe was. And there's some wonderful quotes from Tim Burton, reminiscing about Joe and Joe's involvement.
Yeah, he was very, very talented.
Yeah.
Mary's asking, can you explain the stop motion versus 2D?
Sure. So 2D is where you're drawing on paper, essentially. So 2D animation, or traditional animation as it's called, is hand-drawn on paper, and then the paper is either scanned into the computer, or in the old days, like on Pinocchio and Snow White, there would be an artist who would lay a piece of acetate over the drawing and then draw that, trace that drawing onto the acetate with ink. And then the reverse side of it would be painted. So that's 2D animation. Typically, if you look at Snow White, Pinocchio, Bambi, Cinderella, Alice in Wonderland, Peter Pan, Lady and the Tramp, Jungle Book, 101 Dalmatians, those are all hand-drawn traditional films. And stop motion is where you have a three-dimensional set, and on that three-dimensional set you have three-dimensional puppets, physical puppets that you can hold, and those are animated one frame at a time. So if a puppet is moving, it's you're moving one leg for a frame, then you move it again, then you move it again, then you're tilting down and you're moving the next foot, and you're creating that walk cycle. It's literally a physical, and I'm getting something off of my desk. It's literally a physical three-dimensional puppet, that you can then animate. So,
yeah, I think a really good example of stop motion would be the AT-ATs in Empire Strikes Back. We're all done with stop motion.
Yeah, and also RoboCop. Those were stop motion. The old Gumby and Pokey show was stop motion. Davy and Goliath. Oh, Davy! All right. So that's the difference, And then of course the third is 3D or CG, computer generated animation, and that's essentially all done digitally.
Yeah, your Toy Stories and whatnot.
Yeah, exactly.
So you sent us some photos here that I think are from the book.
Oh yeah. This is one of the what they're doing is they're injecting latex into a mold of Oogie Boogie. So this is the creation of the Oogie Boogie puppet, and it was at the time one of the largest stop motion puppets that had ever been done. So here you've got this plaster mold that's all tied together with typically really rubber bands. But industrial strength rubber bands, and they're injecting latex into that mold. So if you go to the next picture that I think I sent you, there you go. So they've pulled the mold apart. On the right side of the screen, you've got one half of the mold, and on the left you have this guy pulling the cast puppet body out of the mold. Now the difference between Oogie and the other puppets were like solid foam, but Oogie was so big he couldn't be solid foam. So what they did was they made it like he's hollow inside. So if you go to the next picture, I think it shows, you can see the side of Oogie is open, and they actually put his armature in, and then they filled it with these fiber balls, like giant cotton balls.
Oh, wow.
To give him, the girth. and the solidity, so that when he was on set, they could tweak his armature and not sort of collapse the latex outer coating of the puppet.
Right. I wondered how they did it. I just figured it was like an armature inside like a sack almost. But yes, it was latex.
Yeah. So this is the only puppet that was created that was filled like this. Whereas all the other ones, when they cast them, it can't. They would lay, and I don't think I sent these pictures, but they would lay the armature into the mold. They'd put the other half of the mold on top of it, tie it up with rubber bands, so it was really tightly together. And then they'd inject the foam, the liquid foam rubber into it. And when that's set, they pull the mold apart and they pull this puppet out. And there might be a picture. Did I show you? Send you a picture of one of the puppets where it had the rubber flange? No,
no, I think it's the next one. Yeah.
Okay. You don't have that one, or you do?
I don't think so.
Okay, I might not have sent that. Yeah. No. But I do want people to know that there are some bookmarks. You just showed there were some bookmarks for Nightmare Before Christmas, which you can only get from me, the author. And by the way, I do want to point out, it says introduction by Tim Burton. Well, Tim had, there was a placeholder introduction in the book, and it vanished. And they didn't get another one from him to put in the book.
Oh wow!
I'm not sure why, but when the book showed up, I didn't notice it right away. But anyway, the bookmarks were made before that, and there you have it. So
okay.
It's a collectible
bookmarks.
It's a collectible bookmark. But anyway, so.
Yeah, the pictures in this book are just absolutely
you don't beautiful. Have to kill us.
But anyway, yeah, one of the things I sent you, there's a wonderful 2-page spread of fan art that's in the book. And I in the afterlife chapter at the end of the book, I really talk about how this is not just a film, but a film that's gone out into the world and just keeps expanding with fan art, with fan tattoos. And we have a 2-page spread of fan tattoos, and a lot of folks had sent me pictures of their tattoos to hopefully be included in the book. And I will tell you, I got way more tattoo images than I could possibly put in the book. I mean, I could probably do an entire book of Disney Nightmare tattoos.
Here's your next book.
Maybe. I wonder how many people watching would like a book of Disney tattoos. Now this picture here, this is the core team. There was a dozen animators, and I want to point out the young lady with the red shoes on in the front row. That's Angie Glocka. She was the only female animator on the Nightmare crew. And when I interviewed her, I asked her why there weren't more women in stop motion, and she had a really interesting explanation. She said when she was growing up, she always was in her father's shop helping him, and she was very comfortable using power tools and drills and all kinds of stuff like that. And had no problem with it. And when you're doing stop motion, it's very much a very physical, very demanding craft because you're moving a puppet. You're actually physically moving a puppet, and that puppet has to be anchored to the stage, to the set. Usually involving drilling a hole, putting in a screw to screw the foot to the set. And then as you're going along, filling those holes so they don't show up, when they're not in use. So, it's much more physical. And I think she sort of attributed to the fact that that's probably why there weren't as many women at that time. And I'm sure there's many more now. especially with all the advancements and the various equipment advancements to make stop motion a little bit easier to do. You know,
yeah. Her your interview with her was fascinating.
Yeah, she's a wonderful person. And by the way, I'm trying to see, if you look in the photo, so directly above her, there's a guy with long blonde hair, right? And then behind him, that little head back there, that redhead guy, that's Owen Clate. He was one of the other animators. Well, Owen and Angie are married.
Right.
Okay. I like it that she's holding Sally's leg, that I'm assuming was the one that Oogie Boogie was teased with and went to the
And by the way, the gentleman with the flaming red hair on the left side of the screen, he's got the black shirt on. Yeah, that's Paul Berry. And he, while he was working on Nightmare Before Christmas, he had a short film that he had done in the UK called Sandman, and it was nominated that year. I think this was I want to say it was 1992 or 1993, but his short film was nominated for an Academy Award, and Tim Burton sent him a big bottle of champagne and a lovely note congratulating him while he was working on Nightmare. Yeah. So, but I interviewed a fair bit of the animators in the center, between the guy with the pink shirt. Yes, right there where your cursor is. That's Eric Layton, and Eric is or was on Nightmare Before Christmas the supervising animator. He was the guy in charge. He was I believe the first animator that came on to Nightmare Before Christmas after Henry took over as director.
He looks like the youngest one in this group.
Yeah, but boy, I mean, incredibly talented guy and very gracious. He was working on a film in England when I was writing the book, and we were able to do a Skype call while he was in England, and I did a whole interview just over Skype with him. And I think this was before Zoom became the thing, you know. But all of these guys were really terrific. Got just invaluable information from them in terms of, you know, their process and how they went about making the movie, and a lot of them are quoted in the book.
Oh, nice.
Very nice.
Yeah. Oh, and here we go. So here's some of the tattoos, and you know, again, it was really a hard choice to you know, pick out which ones we were going to use. The three calves that you see down at the bottom right there, that's actually somebody I worked with, a colleague at Walt Disney Animation Studios, Vinny D'Amore, and that was he had sent me that. It's sort of a turnaround of his one leg, so you could see all the characters that were on it.
Very cool.
Yeah, so pretty wild.
Craig is saying, I hate that I can't do any Nightmare paintings for Disney. I guess as a master artist, he's limited.
Well, you know something, it's kind of out of my hands. I have no idea who's handling that stuff now.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can see that one in the upper middle. It's like a whole sleeve on her leg. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty wild.
That is crazy.
Ken is saying the tattoo of Jack and Sally on the left was beautiful.
Yeah.
This year there's been so much Nightmare Before Christmas merchandise. Is this year the 30th anniversary? Correct?
Yeah, today's the third. I mean, this year is the 30th anniversary.
Yeah.
But believe it or not, earlier today I was actually at Disneyland, and I went into the Nightmare Before Christmas gift shop right over in New Orleans Square. And I actually went in to see if they had a copy of my book, because I wanted my wife to take a picture of me with the book in the shop, because they have so much cool Nightmare merch in there. And I went in, I couldn't find the book. So I asked one of the cast members, I said, do you have the Nightmare Before Christmas book? She goes, oh my gosh. She goes, we're sold out of it. We're waiting for more inventory to come in. I was like, darn it. But I was like, I was happy it was sold out.
Yeah, really.
Good.
Yeah, you know, that's fantastic.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome.
So this is a great image. This is actually, if you had a pair of 3D glasses, like I do here, you'd be able to see that head in the middle, that's Tim Burton's head being used as a hockey puck. But the scene was reshot with a pumpkin, and that's what's in the movie.
Oh,
and
wow.
it was sort of after they had done this scene, there was, I think Henry was a little apprehensive in showing it to Tim initially. Wasn't sure what the reaction was going to be. But I talked to Tim about it when I interviewed him for the book, and you know, Tim took it, I think, in stride, and you know, kind of him being an artist and an animator himself, you know,
he gets it.
Yeah, he totally got it, you know. And I think it's really kind of fun, and we included it in the book.
That's awesome.
Not in 3D though, by the way.
I believe that was.
I think I sent you the wrong picture, but anyway, everybody gets the idea.
Yeah.
I'll use my glasses from the 3D National Parks book. And
there you go. Absolutely.
And you can go back and watch this on YouTube and pause it there and see it in 3D. There we go.
But you know, it really is a wonderful send up for the movie to really be able to talk about the genesis of the film. You know, how it started, give a little background, a little backstory on Tim and how Tim got into the business and his early years at Disney, and then his meteoric rise as a director, and then also to be able to shine a spotlight on all the talented people who were involved in making the movie, and to tell that story in the production order, if you will, of how the film actually was made. And I was very fortunate. I got to spend a lot of time with Danny Elfman talking about each of the songs that he wrote for the film. Because when you listen to the 10 songs, it's really an operetta. Each song tells a portion of the story and propels the story forward. And so, you know, it wouldn't be the film it is without Danny Elfman's music and songs.
Yeah. The one song, like being from Winnipeg and growing up even north of here, we always had snow for Halloween. So watching Nightmare Before Christmas, seeing Jack, who's a Halloween guy, being amazed by snow, we have snow every Halloween. How do you not know this? That was the one thing that always like, what is he talking about? There's no snow. There's always snow for Halloween. I'm used to that.
Yes.
I wanted to talk about Old Meal Press.
Yes. So
Old Meal Press.
Yeah, you know, Disney Editions published the Nightmare Before Christmas visual companion and has published a number of my other books. And the Old Mill Press has also published a bunch of my other books too. So, you know, I'm in the enviable position of having not only the Nightmare Before Christmas visual companion out in stores and all over the place. In fact, you know, I've had a number of people send me pictures of them holding my book or with my book at Barnes and Nobles. Somebody sent me a picture of themselves in Jackson, Mississippi, somebody else in Louisville, Kentucky. So if you happen to be in a Barnes and Noble and you want to send me a photo of yourself with my book, I'd love to see it. But I also have the House of the Future, Walt Disney, MIT, and Monsanto's Vision of Tomorrow. And that book is officially releasing to the public on Tuesday, next Tuesday. And the book is, there's been a bunch of copies sent out to people who pre-ordered author-signed copies through the Old Mill Press. So folks can still go to the Old Mill Press and order a House of the Future book, and it'll be a signed copy. And for just you guys, just you people who are listening, if you use the code FRIEND5, there it is on the screen, FRIEND5, you get $5 off. So instead of $60, it'll be $55, and it'll be signed and there's usually some extra stuff they throw into.
Yes.
So, as you well know, Kris.
Yes, I know that very well.
So that's at the Old Mill Press.
At theoldmillpress.com. But, you know, if they want to do, you know, if they want to go to their local bookstore, and I always encourage people, you know, if you have a local bookstore, an independent bookstore, support them. They can go and order the book in. If they don't have it in stock, they can easily order it and they'll have it in a few days for you. So try and support your local bookstore if you can. The online retailers, you know, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, they're all carrying it. And I will tell you, Barnes and Noble apparently loves Nightmare Before Christmas because they stock up on everything Nightmare Before Christmas every year, this time of the year. So that's why a lot of these folks around the country have been sending me pictures of themselves in Barnes and Nobles, you know, with my book. So,
let's just touch on this House of the Future book a little bit. We're gonna bump up against time as you say on your podcast.
There we go.
There it is.
But,
the House of the Future. Walt Disney, MIT. It's a beautiful book, and I will tell you that this book is just chock full, if I could show you, just absolutely chock full of photos, stuff people have never seen before. Okay, so there's just a ton of information in here, and I'm super proud of the book. I wrote it because I never got to see the House of the Future. And so what I wanted to attempt to do is create an immersive experience in a book that would at least give people who never saw the House of the Future the sense that maybe they have experienced it without physically walking through it. And those that had seen it, it'll bring back a flood of memories for them.
Yes. And if you want really detailed information, the Skull Rock podcast, the last episode that came out this past Monday, you can listen to Aljon interviewing Dave about the book.
I know, it was kind of surreal. I was a guest on my own podcast. It was craziness.
It was a wonderful interview. It was so interesting. It's like I didn't want it to end. I wanted you to keep talking.
You know what? I love Aljon. Aljon's my brother from another mother. And, you know, he and I just have wonderful conversations. So I love it when he gets to interview me. And by the way, he's going to interview me also in a couple of weeks about my Nightmare Before Christmas book, too.
Good.
And you know, and by the way, each of these interviews that I do with different podcasters, the interviews are different. I tell different stories because, you know, like you guys are asking me interesting questions that other podcasters haven't asked me because they've asked different questions themselves, you know? So each of these interviews are, I think, are really kind of fun and different. It's not the same old stuff.
We have a comment here in the chat. Caleb is saying, not to be on topic, but I want to thank you, Dave, for sharing my Disney history in my Futureland Adventures Facebook group. I truly appreciate it.
Oh, Fantasyland Adventurers Facebook group. Yes, I actually try to tag. You know, when I post, I usually post on Mondays who our guest is on the Skull Rock podcast on my social media channels, and then on Tuesdays I go back to the post. And then I share it with like 20 different groups out there. And, you know, I do it with you guys. And I do that because sometimes when I put a post up on Facebook, their algorithm will say, "Oh, he's promoting something, and we're not gonna show that to a lot of people." So, you know, some of those posts, you know, like 50 or 60 people, you know, like it, and other posts I have hundreds of people liking it. You know what I mean? So. So I try to share it with the groups that are most interested in wanting to do it, and the Fantasyland Adventures are one of the Facebook pages I post to.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on. This was an absolute blast. I wish we had more time to talk about the MIT Future House of. It's a long time.
We have to back on for a third time. That's all.
We got an unprecedented third time.
Or you can come on the solo show, my other podcast.
That's been on that many times, and that's Craig. So
there you go. All right.
Yeah.
Oh, but yes, thank you so much, Dave. And Dave said that he would go in with us on doing a drawing or a raffle or however we want to work this out. And he is going to donate one of his House of the Future books for one of you lucky people that will win, and then he will send it out to you. So we will work out those details.
And it'll be signed. It'll be a signed copy.
Yes. So there you go. Something to look forward to for our GCT listeners.
So we'll bring that up on next week's podcast. So listen to next week's podcast, and we'll have a clue. You know what? Why don't we just do it now? You want to do it now, and people can message us what they want. I'll give us code word. Message us the code word, and you're in a draw. How about that?
Yeah.
Does that sound good?
Sounds fair to me.
Sounds good.
Okay. So the code word is friend5, which would give you the $5 off Old Meal if you go to oldmealpress.com. Sorry, oldmealpress.com. You get $5 off the book. Message us friend5, and you'll be in for a drawing for the book.
Yes. And one of you will be lucky enough to win.
Yeah. And as soon as you guys send me the person's name and mailing address, I will make sure that a book goes out in the mail to them, and they might even have it next week. Who knows?
Yeah, and we'll do the draw next week live on the air.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, we'll do the draw next Thursday live on the show.
Awesome. You know what? Just so everybody knows, if you do the draw next Thursday, I'll be on a plane flying out of the country, so they're going to have to wait an additional 8 or 9 days before they get their book. Just so they know.
Message us in Facebook Messenger to the podcast group.
Yeah.
Okay, not here. Do it.
Kris is getting messages already.
Do it in Facebook Messenger to the podcast group, and the friends of the GCT podcast, and then we will take all those entries and pull a name.
Right.
Awesome.
We got to wrap this up. Kris, what happened on the Grand Circle Tour podcast this week? Were you on?
This last week we did our tips for beating the heat in Disney parks, because we all know that we roast when we're there. And we have another episode that we're going to record, not Sunday. We're actually going to be doing it on Tuesday. And we're going to be talking about tips for first-time visitors to Walt Disney World.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good
awesome
one. And then Kris joined me on the solo show, and we wrapped up Ahsoka series. We did talk episode 7 and 8 of Ahsoka.
Have you seen those yet, Dave?
You know what? I have to catch up. I've watched half of the Ahsoka show.
Okay,
and
you're
I've
going to
really
be blown
enjoyed
away.
it. But I've got to finish watching it. I know they've all dropped now.
Yep.
So absolutely.
Okay. No spoilers for Dave.
Yeah, no spoilers to me. Yes.
Yeah, don't listen to this.
By the way, I've said
I've
the same thing to Al John. Don't spoil it for me, because Al John's on top of it. All right.
That's one of the things I love on Skull Rock podcast is you guys talk about what you're watching.
Yes.
Yeah. Believe it or not, that's one of the more popular segments of our podcast. I can't tell you. Last week, I was at the Disneyana Expo in Anaheim, the Disneyana Fan Club Expo. And I had so many people stop by and say, oh my gosh, I love listening to the Skull Rock podcast. And I really like hearing about what you're watching, because I found some real gems that I didn't know about,
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's like, and I watch really an eclectic array of television shows when I can. And so I try a lot of different things, and I like watching shows from England, UK. I like watching shows that are shot in Europe, that are in English, New Zealand, Australia, as well as shows, from North America. There was a great show I was watching that was shot up in Nova Scotia. I'm just saying that for Stan.
Yeah.
Stan just realized, hey, that's part of Canada.
Actually, surprisingly, we're becoming the Hollywood of Canada here, because movies are being filmed here all the time.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we will have Dave back on again as soon as we can get something worked out with him to talk about this other book. So
yeah, I really wanted to. I know nothing about the Tomorrowland.
Oh, we could have a whole long discussion about it.
And,
there's a lot of fascinating aspects of it. So I hope you have maybe in November or something.
Yeah, Craig is saying we have to have Dave back. Want to hear much about his projects? November for sure. We'll have Dave back on. Steve, who's a friend of ours, who's blind. He says, "Wouldn't it be funny if a blind guy who can't read win the book?"
What can I say? I mean, I think it would be fantastic, but I would hope that maybe he has like one of those special readers. Isn't there like a thing you can wipe over text that then translates it into voice?
Or you could just get his wife to read it to him.
Yeah.
Okay. That's probably easier.
Getting secret guest jackets made up.
Yes.
There we go.
All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the show. Dave, I want to thank you so much for coming on. It was an absolute pleasure having you on. I finally got a chance to meet you.
Stan, Kris, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much. I'll be giving you guys a shout out next week on the Skull Rock Podcast.
Okay.
Sounds great. Stay safe, everybody.
The Grand Circle Tour podcast is brought to you in part by Expedition Roasters. When you visit expeditionroasters.com, use the promo code Grand Circle Tour Podcast, that's all one word, and you will receive 10% off of your purchase. If you would like to keep the adventure going after the show, be sure to visit our Facebook page, Disney Friends of the Grand Circle Tour Podcast. While you're on Facebook, like our page, Grand Circle Tour Podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter, Grand Circle Tour Podcast, on Instagram at GCT Podcast, and our YouTube channel, Grand Circle Tour. On TikTok, Grand Circle Tour. That's all one word. If you'd like to email us, drop us a line, gctpodcast@gmail.com. T-shirts and other fun merch can be found at tpublic.com. Simply search Grand Circle Tour Podcast. If you enjoyed your visit, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Only one rule, make it good. All logos, sounds, music, and songs that are made by and for Disney and its affiliates are owned in full by the Disney Corporation, and they are not, nor are they intended to be owned in any way by the Grand Circle Tour Podcast. Thank you for riding with us, and welcome home.